He faced 11 charges of war crimes. Now the Special Court for Sierra Leone has found the former Liberian leader Charles Taylor guilty of all of them. He's being held responsible for arming rebel fighters in a brutal civil war in neighbouring Sierra Leone that left more than 50,000 people dead.
The trial chamber unanimously finds you guilty of aiding and abetting the commission of the following crimes. Count 1, acts of terrorism. Count 2, murder. Count 3, violence to life. Count 4, rape. Count 5, sexual slavery. Count 6, outrages upon personal dignity. Count 7, violence to life, health and physical or mental well-being of persons. Count 8, other inhumane acts. Count 9, conscripting or enlisting children under the age of 15 years into the armed forces or groups and using them to participate actively in hostilities. Count 10, enslavement. Count 11, pillage. Thank you, Mr. Taylor. You can sit down now.
In a moment, we'll be live in the Sierra Leonean capital, Freetown, with our correspondent Yvonne Ndegi. But first, let's speak with Barnaby Phillips in The Hague. Barnaby, it took over 2 hours to deliver, but in the end, the verdict was clear. Guilty on all counts.
That's right, Adrian. There were levels of proof, and the prosecution didn't succeed in all levels. They didn't show that Charles Taylor had been commanding and controlling the Sierra Leonean rebels, but they certainly did manage to prove, in the opinions of the judges, that he had been aiding and abetting, he had been planning his support for the RUF, resulting in all those atrocities in Sierra Leone. Let me bring in my guest at this point. Her name is Brenda Hollis, and she is the chief prosecutor, so it's a great honour to have her with us right now. Brenda, I'm imagining, look this way, you must be quite pleased.
Well, we're certainly gratified that a judgment has been entered. We believe that the judgment is well supported by the evidence as the presiding judge read it out in court. But we think today is really the day for the people of Sierra Leone. They demanded that this court be created, and this court has now come to trial judgment in yet another case. It's also a big day for the victims and the witnesses who had the courage to come forward, including victims, the victims who today get some measure of justice for the terrible crimes committed against them.
What kind of sentence would you like Charles Taylor to have?
Well, we're going to look very carefully at the language of the trial chamber as it was expressed today, to look at the language signifying his level of involvement. Because you recall there were certainly references to how central his support for the rebels was to the commission of these crimes. So we'll look very carefully at that language. We'll also review the seriousness of the crimes, and then based on that, we will assess what we believe is the sentence that should be adjudged against Mr. Taylor.
I've heard some reactions from Monrovia, the Liberian capital, within the last hour. Some supporters there expressing disappointment, saying that this court is a Western conspiracy, a British-American conspiracy against Africa.
Well, of course, we heard that throughout the trial. The defense argued that very strongly to the judges, a Samoan judge, an Irish judge, a Ugandan judge. And I think that today's conviction speaks more eloquently to the falsity of that allegation than I ever could.
What resonance, what significance do you think of what has happened here today pertains to events elsewhere in the world?
Well, I think it's another important step forward in the fight against impunity. I think it makes it very clear that heads of state and other senior leaders may not hide behind their positions of authority to commit crimes with impunity, so that if you are engaged in criminal conduct, you should expect that you're going to be called to account. And if it's serious conduct such as this, then you can expect you'll be called to account in a criminal court. But at the same time, I think it also shows that even the highest level leaders can get a fair trial. It's required, and they can be given a fair trial before independent and impartial judges. And so on that, I would urge leaders of the world who are not doing everything they can to turn over fugitives from justice to turn those people over so that they can be tried in fair proceedings based on indictments or charges that have been reviewed by judges.
Brenda Hollis, the Chief Prosecutor here at the United Nations Special Court, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Adrian, will be having more proceedings from The Hague throughout the afternoon, so stay with us here on Al Jazeera.
Barnaby, many thanks indeed. Let's take you live straight away to Freetown, the capital of Sierra Leone. Yvonne Ndegi is there. Yvonne, what's been the reaction to this verdict there?
Well, Adrian, hundreds of people who were caught up in those years of deadly violence, victims of Charles Taylor, if you like, have been gathered here for several hours at the UN Special Court in the capital, Freetown. Remember, this is where Charles Taylor was originally present. He was transferred to Europe on the grounds that his presence, his physical presence in Sierra Leone might cause instability. It's been charged, it's been emotional, there have been tears, there have been amputees. Remember, being amputated was one of the hallmarks of the violence that we saw exacted on people by the Revolutionary United Front. And I've been running around trying to gauge reaction from some of those victims, and I've got one of them with me now just to talk a little bit about how this verdict feels. Lamine Jusujaka, thanks for taking the time to appear on Al Jazeera. Lamine, I want you to start by just raising your arms. I want you to raise your arms so that people can see what happened to you.
Exactly so, yeah.
Tell us how you feel about the verdict.
Well, I feel very much obliged when the verdict, the prosecutor came out with the verdict that Charles Taylor is responsible for the crimes being committed against the people of Sierra Leone. We have been waiting for quite a long time, awaiting long trial, awaiting the verdict to come out. So the verdict came out today with a very good news that the news that came out of the iceberg that Charles Taylor is wholly responsible for the atrocities being caused to the people of Sierra Leone. So we are very much happy and very much obliged. I feel that more sentence, more years, 100 years or more years will be given to Charles Taylor to serve in the prison.
So you're saying you want Charles Taylor to be sentenced to 100 years in prison?
100 years or more years, yes, imprisonment.
But is this verdict justice for you? Do you feel that you can have closure now or not? We talked a little bit when I spoke to you earlier about the fact that, let me just finish, about the fact that victims like yourself hadn't received any kind of compensation or financial support. So is this justice?
Well, it is justice on the other hand, but what we are expecting the international community as a whole to make sure that the disarmament of the people, the perpetrators who did the atrocity on us, and the victims who are going permanent disabilities should have gone simultaneously. Disarming the people and them to make sure that the reparation process is in progress. So that has not been done. They spent $300 million to reintegrate the ex-combatants into their communities, unlike the victims who have only received only $3 million. In fact, not to be compared to what we are going through, because somebody who have lost his both hands, both feet, and at the same time there is nowhere where he or she can generate funds. It is a very difficult situation. That was a failure to the international communities.
But is this African justice? There's been a lot of criticism, Lamine, about this process happening in The Hague, and you know that if Charles Taylor, or when he is sentenced, if there's no appeal or if he's not successful at an appeal, that he will be imprisoned in the United Kingdom. So there are those who say this is not African justice, this is the white man's justice. How do you feel about that?
They were the one who came together to make sure that this justice, they implement the court as a whole, International Criminal Court. So I see no reason why they should object towards that. And they were the one who met together to design where and when somebody is being found guilty, where to prison him or her. So I see no reason why they should object that. I see no reason why they should object that. I think when it's been sentenced and it's taken to UK, I see no reason why the UK people should object towards that. It was them who met and discussed and met and agree. It is their agreement.
Lamine, thanks for taking the time to talk to us. And as you just heard Lamine making the point there about the victims not having received enough compensation and support. So even though this verdict has been passed and we expect that at some stage Charles Taylor will be sentenced, for them life is still such a struggle.
Yvonne, many thanks indeed. Yvonne Ndegi reporting live there from Freetown, Sierra Leone.